Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of the MCU Ranked review, where every week the three of us review every single Marvel movie in order, then rank them from the best to the worst. I'm your host, Hoodie. With me, as always, my co-host, Zero. And rounding out the three musketeers, our dear friend with a cold, Kaiser.
Hey.
Guys, this week I watched a little-known film. Well, yesterday night, I watched a little-known film called The Incredible Hulk. That's not a joke,
Yes.
because this is an incredibly little-known film. In fact, I venture to guess that not many people even knew this was part of the MCU, because why would it be? But it is.
Yeah. Definitely coming into
Different
this,
actor
I
for
did not
Hulk.
know.
Yeah, so this one came out in 2008, about a month after, if I'm correct, a month after Iron Man. The interesting thing about this movie, though, and I kind of, before we go into just plot synopsis or any sort of business, that I kind of want to talk about the production of this movie, because it is really wacky. So I did some research after watching the movie, and there's already a bit of strangeness with the fact that, like, this is a Marvel character in the MCU but owned by Universal, as opposed to, not Disney yet, but Disney,
Right.
and Marvel Studios and all that. So it's already basically the stepchild. But on top of that, so production of this movie technically starts all the way back in 1996 with a first draft written by a guy named Zach Penn. Zach Penn, you might know for co-writing X-Men 2 and then X-Men 3 The Last Stand. He also came up with the story for Avengers, and he co-created the show Alphas. I don't know if you've ever seen Alphas, Kaiser, but me and Zero have. It's a very good show on Sci-Fi. Basically, like, what if it follows mutants, but it's not like X-Men mutants. It follows these people with superpowers who work for the government as like cops and stuff. It's pretty cool. Got canceled, but the show's pretty great. So, I mean, X-Men 2 is good. X-Men The Last Stand, not great, but like this, so far, Zach Penn seems to have some sort of credibility in this department. So in 1996, he writes the first draft for this movie called The Incredible Hulk. Not much of that draft gets made into what the movie we got. Most notably, I think only 2 scenes, but technically that is the first draft. Originally, this was supposed to be a sequel to the movie that came out in 2003 by Ang Lee called I think it's just called Hulk. That never really stopped being true. Like, that was it. Even now,
I actually didn't know that.
yeah, even now, it's still kind of like, at this point, I think we could just go ahead and say, no, not a sequel, not canon. But, like, it's still a little ambiguous. Because, okay, I didn't pull up any quotes, but when I was doing research, a lot of, like, Kevin Feige, like, a lot of interviews with him, it's basically just comes down to him saying, like, kind of, yes and no, not really, maybe a little bit. So it's a bit ambiguous in that end. In 2006, though, 3 years after that movie, Zach Penn, who wrote the 1996 draft, writes 3 new drafts. Then Ed Norton comes on, to play Bruce Banner, but also as part of his contract he was going to write his own version of the movie. So he's now brought on as Bruce Banner. He has a month to write a new script. He does so. Then he goes to Comic-Con. They're like, they're parading this movie, doing press for this movie. He's at Comic-Con. He says, I am the writer on this movie. Now, the thing about it is that he's technically not. He is not listed as the writer for, like, when you go to pull up this movie and you, like, pull the box, like the DVD case or whatever, it does say Zach Penn is the writer. Norton claims that he did it at Comic-Con. Zach Penn says, fuck you, basically. Not in those words, but he's like, screw you, I'm the writer. Right. So Ed Norton's not officially. Also, at some point, some anonymous person claims to have also written a draft of this movie and tried to, like, lobby for credit too. So, like, this movie is a complete mess all the way back from 1996 to now. It is. So yeah, it's pretty rough. Wow. So that's just kind of like a brief recap, and we don't necessarily know why Ed Norton, like, we don't know specific reasons for why Ed Norton didn't continue his role, but I would have to imagine some of that's going to do with what happened with the writing credits and Zach Penn, and then, it's also rumored that he didn't really like Joss Whedon, who directed, he was going to direct Avengers, and then there's also some other stuff about just not getting paid enough, so a lot of shit went down with the production of this movie, and you know what? It kind of shows because this movie is not that great. Let's just spoiler alert right there. The movie's not that great. But before we get into plot stuff, I actually wanted to just ask you guys a question. What do you think about Ed Norton as the Hulk? Better, worse than Mark Ruffalo?
I definitely like Mike Ruffalo better. So that's one of my biggest complaints about the movie is that when you're watching Avengers, it's really fun to watch Ruffalo's performance as Banner and the way he plays off the other Avengers. But in this movie, I don't think it's Norton's fault. I just think it's the way the movie is. I don't find Banner to be very interesting in this movie. Like, he's kind of... I just watch it and I'm like, nah.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Zero, anything?
I can kind of relate, but I don't necessarily agree. I do, like Norton's Banner. Like, he sort of feels more like the classic sort of unimposing, smart guy that Bruce Banner is supposed to be. Mark Ruffalo, he certainly has better chemistry with the Avengers than I think this Banner would, but I think you gotta, lend some credit where it's due.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Well, here's my take on it, basically. Ed Norton sound like if I was, if someone said, hey, pitch me a Hulk movie with an actor, and, I was going through and I saw Ed Norton's name, I'd be like, whoa, that's a really good idea.
That's a great pick.
Yeah, like that is a solid actor to do this. Yeah. But something about it, I was just watching this movie and something about every single Bruce Banner scene, and maybe it's because of me being used to Mark Ruffalo, but it just felt weird. It felt off. And, this sort of plays into the weird continuity with, is it in continuity with 2003 Hulk? And, and now is it continuity with this, the MCU Hulk? Because it does feel like different characters. It like, I'm not going to talk about 2003 because I haven't seen it since 2004 probably, but.
Yeah, same here.
But this Hulk feels like if you took out the Tony Stark scene, you took out, a couple other whatevers and like S.H.I.E.L.D. references or whatever, this movie does feel like its own thing, not related to the MCU at all, because it's not even like it's the same character played by two different actors where it's like, I watched Iron Man 1 and yeah, Terrence Howard isn't Don Cheadle, but I was still like, it's still whatever. It's I could buy that it's Rhodey. This one just feels like actually different characters.
Well, and I think one of the things that doesn't really help with that is, like, you watch Iron Man, and, like, further on in the series, we see Pepper, we see Rhodey, we see Coulson. We see all these people come back later on, but, like, General Ross is the only one who comes back from that movie.
Yeah.
No one else is ever seen again.
That's so crazy, because this movie tries so hard to set so many things up. Like, this movie genuinely, like, if this movie was good, this movie would be the base of the MCU. You could tell because like they set up Mr. Blue as a villain in the future with the leader. Then they set up Abomination. I don't even think Abomination died in this movie, so he could still come back. Then they have Thunderbolt Ross. They just sort of forget about Betty. Like it was really weird watching this movie because I'm like, in my head, I'm watching him and how much he clearly is like so in love with this Betty girl, and then all I'm thinking about is like, what about Black Widow? Because like it doesn't.
Right.
And that's
cheating on her.
that's maybe not fair, but it's like, I don't know. It feels. I feel like it's not fair to blame this movie on that and then not blame the MCU. But on one hand, I don't know. This movie sucks, so I'm gonna put the blame on that one. Because it's just like, I don't buy the fact that, like, because he was gone for 5 years. He turns into the Hulk, runs away for 5 years, and he comes back and he's still so in love with this Betty girl. And Betty's the one thing who could like pull him back from being the Hulk. And then we go to the MCU and it's like, literally have never mentioned this character one time. He comes back, he only deals with the Avengers, he only talks to Natasha as a romantic interest. It's like completely forgotten about in every aspect. And on one hand, I kind of wish they just dropped Thunderbolt Ross entirely. Like, why make this even more confusing by bringing him back in Civil War and then bringing him back again in Infinity War?
Honestly, I've been saying the same thing since, like, I think he first came back in Civil War,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or maybe Age of Ultron. But as soon as I saw him, I was like, you don't belong in this universe. What are you doing here?
Because even if you like just look at his character in this movie, Ross, and you look at his character in the MCU, they really don't even seem like they have the same motivations. Because in this movie, he's like,
No.
I'm all about weaponizing the Hulk. I'm all about trying to build this army to be super powerful. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And then you go into Civil War, and he's like, he's actually pretty reasonable, and he's just
Yeah.
sort of like talking about, you know, the Sokovia Accords, and it's just a good idea to have you sign them. And I like, you kind of get where he's coming from, even though like he is the villain in his movie, and then he's just a reasonable guy in this movie. It just feels like a really dumb idea to have them cross over at
Yeah.
all.
Well, when I saw him in Civil War, I didn't even realize it was even the same actor from Incredible Hulk. Because I had only seen it once in like 2009 or 10. And then by the time I saw Civil War, I was just like, oh, this is just the Secretary of State or whatever. Like, it didn't even occur to me that it was the same character until I was watching the movie. And I was like, oh, wait a second.
And I imagine you are literally the rest of the world in that regard.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, anything before we go ahead and just jump into the movie?
Nope.
Okay. If you haven't seen the movie, this is basically how it goes. We open up. It's a montage. Because the weird thing about this movie, it's not an origin story. It sort of touches on it here and there, but this movie takes place 5 years after the initial Hulk incident. So everything, this like sort of 2-minute montage is just sort of like giving us brief glimpses into the sort of what happened. We see that we don't see Hulk, but we see, you know, someone is destroying this lab. He's attacking Betty. He's attacking Thunderbolt Ross, and just a bunch of wreckage. We end up in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, where Bruce Banner just sort of ran away. This is what is in continuity. This is like the one thing that is like, okay, yeah, this has definitely happened.
Yeah.
Because at the end of 2003's Hulk, he runs away and goes to South America. This one picks up, he's in South America. So in that regard, go ahead.
I just want to say that as far as the beginning kind of opening credits montage thing, I'm watching it, and I couldn't tell if it was, like, helpful or confusing, because it's like, all right, so we're getting a bit of the origin story here, so that it doesn't bog down the movie, but at the same time, with all the clips and the way they're set up and everything, I was like, I'm not entirely sure what's going on right now.
Yeah, I actually kind of get the feeling that might have been, like, a studio note or something. I have a feeling that, like, the script just said, let's start in South America, but the studio was, because, like, I imagine the writer, who, whether that was Ed Norton or Zach Penn, was like, yeah, you don't need the origin story. It's fine. Let's just fucking move on.
Right.
Because surprisingly, Hulk is probably one of like the most done superheroes in general. Like, for some reason, despite being a huge CGI monster, people were doing him all the way back with like Lou Ferrigno, just like, well, this wasn't CGI, just paint him
trying
green.
to do him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it surprisingly never worked, but they've been trying for the longest time. One of the most tried superheroes. So people with the whole like Spider-Man effect, where it's like, you know what happens, you have an idea, let's just skip forward to that. That's what I think was probably written, and I think the studio was like, no, they don't know, let's just put that montage in, which I think ends up being a little weird. I agree. I think I would probably just cut that montage out entirely. It just on top of like not really doing much, it also just felt weird. So like it didn't add anything, and it sort of detracted for me, but not a huge deal. Anyways, we move forward. He's in South America. We see, and by the way, I'm probably going to forget a lot of shit about this movie. So if you guys remember anything, please help me.
So, all right. Well, the first thing that I remember is that he was doing the yoga with that guy, and all I could think was whatever he's doing with his stomach there is gross.
Yeah, very gross, very creepy. So he's doing.
I was always really impressed by it.
It was impressive,
impressive,
but at the same time, it's like, that's not okay.
He's doing yoga. He's doing this sort of Pilates yoga thing, and as he's doing it, I don't know. Have you guys ever seen the movie Whiplash?
No.
There's a scene in
Bit.
it's a really good movie, actually. I love it. And there's a scene in Whiplash where the guy's trying to have him make sure he's on beat, because it's a movie about drumming. So he's making sure he's on beat, and he's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then he slaps him, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, slaps the guy again, 1, 2, 3, 4, slaps him again, and then he's like he's alternating between if he's like slapping him before 4 or after 4, and he's asking him like, am I rushing or am I dragging? Am I going faster than 4 or slower than 4? And he keeps slapping him, and the guy's like, he's freaking out, he doesn't know. And that reminded me of the scene where it's like, Ed Norton, Bruce Banner is just like trying to meditate, and the guy's slapping him. He's like, "Don't get angry." Slap him again. Don't get angry. Slap him again. Really bad idea.
That's
if you
the
ask
kind
me.
of training I want to impart on my students.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
hit them.
Yeah.
You're like, stay calm. Stay calm.
I agree. That seems like a good idea. Anyways, from there, I think we go back to his house for a little bit, and he does some. He's sort of going through messages with this guy who's Mr. Blue, and Bruce Banner's code name is Mr. Green, and they're sort of just passing messages back and forth, saying like, "Hey," I think he gets a package with like a flower or something. He's like, "Make sure it's a high dosage," and you sort of gather that Bruce Banner is trying to find a cure for the Hulk. He's trying to lose this gamma poisoning, gamma radiation.
Yeah.
And whoever Mr. Blue is, some sort of gamma specialist, trying to help him with this over some encrypted chat room. They don't know each other. Mr. Blue wants to meet him. Mr. Green, Hulk, doesn't want to go back home because he doesn't think it's safe. Cut to, we go to what is Bruce Banner's day job. He's seemingly just doing manual labor at this sort of soda plant, bottling glass soda bottles and all that. But on the low, he's also doing some electrical engineering stuff for the owner, and when doing that, he's like messing around with some tools, cuts himself, blood drips down, lands in one of the bottles. Very disgusting. But he fucking freaks out. He's like, everyone stop, runs down. He goes to wipe up the blood, finds a little drop of blood, wipes it up, says, "We're all good." Fucking idiot, didn't see the bottle literally right next to it with a blood drop on it. So fucked up.
Fool.
Bottle, the production moves on. Bottle ships off to America with blood inside the soda, where Stan Lee drinks it and dies. A quick note, this movie's actually fairly simple. Like, if you remember when I did the Iron Man thing, it was a lot of like, here we are in this situation, jump to, here we are in this situation, jump to, here we are in this situation. I noticed that when I was watching this movie, The Incredible Hulk, a lot of it was just like, Ed Norton does this, then Ed Norton does this, then Ed Norton does this, then it felt like we were like really just being told one straightforward story the entire time, with like occasionally would jump to I forget Tim Roth, it's the Abomination, what's his name?
Oh, Blonsky.
Blonsky.
Okay, yeah, Blonsky. Let me write that down so I don't forget. Okay, so Stan Lee dies to radiation because Ed Norton's a fucking dummy, failed his perception check. So Ed Norton goes back home, I think, right? He goes back home, does some more communications with Mr. Blue or whatever. But on the other side, United States, Thunderbolt Ross gets his secretary or some shit. She comes in and she's like, "We found some gamma poison thing, I think."
Yes,
so we found some dude died from gamma poisoning. We infer that, okay, Ross is like on the lookout. He's like basically casing every single incident of any sort of gamma anything in the entire world or whatever, or in the United States, and he's just trying to find the Hulk through that. So he says, "Where was that bottle packed? Brazil. Let's go to Brazil." Then I think he just gets Blonsky at this point. I don't know if anything happens with Ed Norton quite yet. So he goes. Oh, there's a little scene in here, and it's not really that important, but it kind of tells us who Bruce is as a character. As he's leaving the factory at his job, he sees some people, harassing a girl. He goes to help her. So, and I guess that's important because it also sets up that the guys who harass this girl are like, they really do not like Bruce. Yeah, presumably because of that.
Yeah, and so they set up this thing with like, oh, he likes this, this Brazilian girl, and he does, these guys have beef with him or whatever, because one of them like shoves him in their locker room or whatever. But I was getting through the factory scene, and I was like, aside from the blood, none of this is relevant to the rest of the movie. Like, we could have cut all of this out.
100%. The girl never. I mean, she does come back in a scene, but like it never it never leads to some sort of narrative payoff or anything. It's just is just a random thing that sort of was a part of it. But anyways, we go to Ross is receiving. This is a really weird interaction. Ross is at his military base or whatever. We see a helicopter flying in. Someone's like, they're explaining who's coming in. It's this guy named Blonsky. He's Russian, born in England, is being borrowed from England's army for the U.S. Army. Which okay,
for
like,
Shield.
Is that how? Oh wait, he worked for Shield.
No. So he's born in Russia, raised in England, part of the Royal Marines, and being borrowed by Shield for this mission. Because
Yeah,
Ross works for Shield.
Is that how things actually? I mean, I'm not a military boy, but that seems not how things work. But whatever. We get Blonsky. Blonsky's here. Seems like a good. Seems like a soldier. Seems like a functioning soldier. He's being hyped up as very strong and very capable. He's like, this is your ace in the hole for the Hulk. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, sure he is, buddy.
Sure.
Well,
okay.
So my favorite thing is that as they're heading there on the helicopter, he's like, we're looking for a white male. And all I can think is like, Brazil is super diverse. There's definitely white guys in Brazil. You're going to try to tell me you're looking for one.
That definitely limits the pool, but it's still a pool. You know, like that is still a bunch of people you'll probably find. And then like Blonsky's like, is he a fighter? And the guy and Ross just like hammers into him like, shoot him. I don't give a fuck if he's a fighter. Like, dude, just tell him. Like, just tell him. Just
it's kind of important to know that he turns into a giant green monster.
You don't even have to say that. Just say like, hey, he's gonna kill you, so shoot him. Like, you don't have to be like, I mean, yeah, you probably should tell him about the monster thing, but like, at the very least, tell him that like, this is dangerous, kill him, instead of being all vague about it. Whatever. They go to Brazil, and they find Ed Norton, Bruce Banner sleeping in his apartment. They're like waiting to go in.
Yeah, so just to step back for a second, I thought it was weird that like, so they pull this guy in from England and then they start doing like Black Ops missions in Brazil. Like, does the Brazilian government just not know or care about this?
I literally had the same thought. I was like, this is not legal. 100%. This is not legal. Okay.
They literally have like a team of goons walking down the street carrying machine guns.
Dressed in all black.
In there with like an armored truck. Like,
yeah. I don't know. Whatever. So they're in Brazil. Bruce notices them at the door or something. Very perceptive this time around. Not so much the other time. But when they're not paying attention, he stuffs some pillows under his blanket, runs away to the other side of the building or whatever. They rush in. They're ready to. They fucking unload all over this guy. They were ready to kill. They listened to Ross's advice. They were like, shoot first, ask questions later. They fucking destroy this guy. Turns out, pillow. They go after chase over. This is where the girl comes back into play because Bruce jumps out from his building and lands into her building, and that's the last time. They basically just says, shh, and that's the last time we ever see of her. Then I think...
Yeah, and that scene works just as well if he doesn't know that person beforehand.
Yeah, so really not pay off in any sort of aspect. It's just random. But whatever. Yeah. Initiate a chase scene. We see Blonsky. We see like the whole squad of soldiers seems pretty capable. Not quite capable enough to catch Bruce, but whatever. They seem pretty capable. But Blonsky specifically is like he's making shortcuts. He's doing stunts and stuff. So we get the impression this guy is, you know, he's the real deal. Is he good enough for the Hulk? Clearly not. But whatever. So we chase him. While Bruce Banner is running away, he sees his heart rate going up. He comes across these guys from his work, these bullies, and he's like, fuck. So they start chasing him too. They start chasing him too. He runs back to the factory where they work at, sneaks in. Now they're on him. Blonsky and the other soldiers are on him. Everyone's converging into this one point. The three bullies grab onto Bruce Banner, and he's like, please stop. Oh, I forgot. This is actually, I thought it was kind of funny. So I do want to go all the way back to to when he was actually at work. He had a line where he was like, you won't like me when I'm hungry. Thought that was really funny. That pays off again here because he's like, no, angry, bad. Whatever. And then they're like beating him up basically, and then while they're beating him up, the soldiers are slowly coming in from, you know, all angles, and then he's like really he's basically about to fucking Hulk out. Then he does Hulk out. He's fucking killing everyone left and right. It's a really weird scene where he's in the dark or something. They can't quite see him, but the person, the Brazilian person who is like a bully, goes to kick him and then accidentally kicks the Hulk because he didn't see that like Bruce had already turned. But if you couldn't see him, then were you just kicking randomly and just hoping it was gonna connect? So like, how did you not see the Hulk there? Anyways, Hulk pulls him in, eats him or something. I don't know, whatever the Hulk does.
Hulk eats people, right?
Yeah, sure. And
Probably.
then the soldiers come in. They're like, we got a bogey. And then they're like, no, that's Bruce. Fucking everyone unloads, literally doing nothing. Hulk is incredible. He's invincible.
He's spectacular.
Yeah, I think he just kills everyone here except Blonsky. Is that what happens?
Yes.
Yeah, which is why Ross is like, hey, good job, even though, like, they didn't catch him. So I'm not sure by what standards he did a good job, but...
Whatever the case may be, Hulk destroys everything, runs away, ends up in Guatemala. I don't know geography. This is kind of just...
Okay. I know geography, and as soon as they said that, I was like, all right, hang on, there's a problem here. So, he's in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, all right? And I crunched the numbers on this one. It's a little over 4,000 miles from that city to Guatemala, which is roughly the same distance from Boston, Massachusetts to Warsaw, Poland. I don't know how he got there in freaking a night.
Those Hulk legs, they really, his jumping capabilities. Just
guess so.
One big leap. Okay. Whatever, he ends up in Guatemala. He ends up in Guatemala. They lose track of him. But the weird part here, he wakes up as Bruce, like, where am I? He doesn't really know. So literally the entire time he was the Hulk going to Guatemala, wakes up as Bruce, He doesn't know where he is, finds this guy, he speaks Portuguese to this guy. Guy's like, I don't speak Portuguese. So he picks up, oh, where am I? He says it in Spanish, you are in Guatemala. Then we don't really spend a lot of time here. He buys some shorts, and then from there, he just goes back to the USA.
Yeah.
Oh, and then, okay.
For seemingly no reason.
Yeah, I skipped some other stuff here earlier on. He did, there was one important thing is, during one of the scenes before he ran away from Brazil, he did talk to Mr. Blue about... Mr. Blue was like, I need a blood sample. This will be important later. So he sends Mr. Blue a blood sample, and then all that shit goes down. So now he's back. Yeah. He's in Guatemala, leaves, gets some stretchy pants, then goes to the USA, where he goes to Betty's college, basically, where she works. On the other side, I don't know where this happened, so I'm just going to put this in here now. With the U.S. Army, with Blonsky, Blonsky's like, "What the fuck, dude? You should have told me about that. Let's level the playing field, basically." And we get some exposition on like what actually is going on. We learned that the Hulk incident was a very fucked up, basically, version of the super soldier serum, and that was like they don't mention Captain America, which is a little weird. They just sort of never bring that up, and even later on, Tony doesn't bring it up either when he talks about it either. So it's I don't know if Captain America wasn't in the books at this point or not, but whatever. They talk about the super soldier serum and how it was like iced and how they brought it back for a little bit. It didn't really work, but it also it didn't work, but also Ross thinks like that's totally cool and wants to do it anyways. So he's like, listen, Blonsky, I'll give you a little bit, just a squeeze.
A little bit.
Yeah, I'll just put a little drop in your mouth and we're all good to go. So Blonsky's like, fuck yes, dude, because what we learn about this, and this is why I think he's a fairly good character. I think he's a little underdeveloped, but we learned that, he's a great soldier, but he's getting old, and he has this line where he's like, if I could just, be in the body from 10 years ago or whatever, that's a guy I wouldn't want to fight. And I thought like that is a really good motivation. He's sort of, he has so much experience, but with experience comes age, and he just wants to be powerful again. And he sees Bruce Banner, he sees the Hulk, and he's like, this guy has all the power in the world and he doesn't want it. I want it. And that sort of escalates later on, but for now he settles on, I just want a little bit of that cap juice. So he gets a little bit of the injection. Now we go back to Bruce. I don't know when that actually happened, but we go back to Bruce. He sees his girlfriend Betty, or ex-girlfriend Betty. He doesn't say anything because he sees that she also has a boyfriend. So he just fucking bounces. He goes to this dude. We really don't...
Stanley.
Yeah, we don't know who this guy... They never explain it. It's just a guy who makes pizzas that he knows and that Betty knows, but whatever. That's good
We all
enough, I
have
guess.
allies.
Yeah, we all have
Yeah.
a Stanley pizza man.
Yeah,
So-
not Stan Lee though. Stanley.
So he goes to Stanley. He says, they have a bit of a reunion. He's like, nothing you heard about me is true. And Stanley's like, I always knew. And then he's like, what can I do for you? He just needs a place to crash. So he crashes in the upstairs room of the pizza place. I think, and then he's like, oh, can I have one more thing too? 3 pizzas. Okay, I just have 3 pizzas. So he takes.
So he has 3 pizzas, a bike, and like a coat that says he works for Stanley's. And I'm like, all right, did he like ask him for a fake job or like what's going on?
Yeah, like
here?
what was the explanation? Like he was like, I need to sneak into this government lab and I need 3 pizzas to do it. Whatever. He gets the 3 pizzas.
Right, you're the science man.
He gets the 3 pizzas, goes back to Betty's college. He's trying to sneak in. Lou Ferrigno is playing the security guard. I don't know if you guys caught that. Lou Ferrigno's
Yeah.
like,
I did catch that. That was nice.
he's like, I can't let you in. Bruce is like, would you do it for a medium pizza? He's like, hell yeah, I would. So you know,
Think I
that's
give
fair.
a fuck about this job?
That's fair. I take the medium pizza too. So he gives him the pizza. He goes in. He's in the computer lab. He luckily has more pizzas because another dude's there. Interesting little factoid about this is a bit of a contradicting factoid about this actually. The guy who he gives the next pizza to, the actor who plays him is also the actor who plays Peter Parker's teacher in Spider-Man Homecoming. So one could assume that he was a student at this point. 10 years later, he's a teacher for this high school. We could assume that's the same character. But interesting second fact about that character is that from my understanding, this is like an Easter egg that guy was not originally. He was originally supposed to be Amadeus Cho, who Amadeus Cho is a very popular character who he's like a kid, sort of like a Shazam situation. He's a kid who is also the Hulk, very smart, like one of the smartest people in the world. But whatever. That guy was supposedly, word on the street was that he was Amadeus Cho, even though Amadeus Cho's Asian because his last name's Cho. But whatever. So a bit of a contradiction. No, nothing's really confirmed. We don't 100% know if that guy is the same character or if he was Amadeus Cho, whatever. He has some pizza now. Good for him. Meanwhile, Bruce is on the computer. He logs on using Betty's password and all that. Still remembers it 5 years later. He's looking for his detail because he's here looking for data because Mr. Blue needs more to develop a cure. He thinks Mr. Blue is like onto something, but he doesn't have enough to like complete it. So he thinks the data is probably somewhere in the database. Let me just go look it up. Let me pull it up. He looks up his name. Nothing. There's nothing. He's fucking wiped from the system. He's screwed. And then he just goes back to Stanley's, I think. He just go get some pizza. So he goes back to his apartment or his room or whatever. And just interject me if I skip something, because I feel like I did. Now back at Stanley's Pizza, we see Betty and her boyfriend, played by Ty Burrell, who's from Modern Family. And, interesting thing about this guy, he is also a superhero. I forget who it was, but, like, this character that is Betty's boyfriend is also, like, a superhero in the comics. So another thing that was potentially being set up that just never got anything played out. But
well, I mean, even in the context of this movie, like he does have one thing that's like kind of important that he does later on, but overall, he was a pretty useless character.
yeah, 100%. Got a weird amount of screen time for how useless he was.
Yeah.
Or not, I don't know if useless is the right term. It's just like irrelevant. He
He does do something to help the plot, kind of like the bullies in Brazil, but at the same time, there was definitely a way to do the movie just as well and totally write him out.
Yeah, 100%. So it's a weird, it's a little weird how, I mean, with how much screen time he got, it was clear that like they were at least keeping the card on the table for like, let's maybe make him a character in the future, but screw this movie. Nothing matters in this movie. So Betty walks in with her date, she's like, Stanley, make us a pizza. And Stanley's like, I'm closed, bitch. She's like, please. He's like, fuck you, whatever. Meanwhile, Stanley's like, oh no, Bruce is here. Bruce, dumb as fuck, just walks out. He's like, oh, I did, and then walks away. He just fucking runs. He runs. And then Betty's like, oh my God. She runs after him. Bruce is he's hiding behind a dumpster. She's like, where are you, Bruce? Where are you? And then cut to Bruce is now running on the highway, or like walking away on the highway. It's the middle of the rain. Betty drives up Now remember, Betty saw him. And what he did was he ran away and then hid. This time, immediately right after, she finds him again, and he's like, "Well, second time's a charm." And then they fucking hug each other, and it's like, "Well, do you want to be here or not? Make up your mind, Bruce." But okay.
Well,
anyway.
so my
That's
favorite
always
thing was
confused me.
like between those two scenes. There is a scene where she goes back in and asks Stanley, "Oh, did I see what I just think I saw?" And Stanley's like, "Oh, I don't know what to say." And then I was like, but she's there with her boyfriend getting pizza, and she just leaves him there? Like,
I feel bad. I feel bad for that guy. I feel a little bad. But it would have been awkward if she didn't leave him there, and then she finds Bruce on the highway, and they go hug each other, and then in the passenger seat is her boyfriend. Then you have to watch as Bruce goes to open the door, sees there's someone else. He goes in the back seat, and then just watch the drive back. Anyways. They embrace. They just have a little bit of they say something. I don't remember what the fuck they said. They go back to her house, and I don't know. He fucking stays there, and then he says like, "I'm gonna leave in the morning" or whatever. And then there's also this weird line. I don't know why they included that. She was like, "Can I get you anything?" And he was like, "Can I have some cash for the bus?" Like, why did you write that in the? I would have assumed, like, if you just had the next scene him going to the bus, I wouldn't have been like, "Where did he get the money?" I would have been like, "Sure, whatever." I'm sure he found $1 on the street or something. But no, you had to make this weird scene where he's like asking his ex-girlfriend for cash.
Well, they totally should have reversed that with the scene where he's with Stanley, and Stanley's like, "Oh, do you need anything else?" And he's like, "Well, actually." And then we don't get any context for why he's riding down the street with that coat and a bike and 3 pizzas.
Whatever happens, whatever fucking weird shit they wanted to write. Ed Norton, Zach Penn, I don't know which one of you wrote this. Whichever one of you did should be ashamed. Terrible line. Anyways.
Actually, it was the third anonymous writer. Responsible for that scene.
That's why he was anonymous. No one wants credit for that. Okay, so next scene. He presumably gets some money for the bus. He goes, because next scene, it's the next day, he's going to the bus. So, okay, they go to, I think, like, she gives him a ride to the university where there's a bus at the university. Or I don't know. We just get there. We're at the college now. Who the fuck cares? So we're at the college, and then, like, while they're walking, he's like, "Someone's following us," or some shit. We look around and we see one of these elite soldiers stepped on a branch or something, made a little twig snapped, and alerted Bruce Banner. Very perceptive this time. Not the first time. The second time, yes. The third time, very perceptive. First time with that bottle of soda, missed that shit. Did not see it at all. This time, he sees all the troops. They're storming around. Ross is like, "Which one of you fuckers did that?" All right, everyone go in. Everyone's fucking all these. He assembled the entire U.S. military here. They have like they have a helicopter with like a machine gun. They have like 2 tanks. They have like they have these weird jeeps that have like sonic paralysis things that are. They really they pull out all the stops for this one.
Yeah, and I thought it was weird because like Ross calls in all these guys and they're just like smashing cars with their trucks and whatnot. I'm like, can the military just do this? Can they just cause all this collateral damage? Like, do they pay for this afterwards?
This is a different branch of the military. This branch of the military also gets to go to other countries and just do whatever they want. They really
the CIA, right.
Okay, so we're at this college. Bruce is just on the run. I think. Oh yeah, and then Betty like goes to one of the tanks and says, "Fuck you, Dad." And then her dad comes out and she goes with her dad and they're arguing a little bit. And then Bruce is just on the run from all these guys. Blonsky, you see Blonsky running, and this man. Oh, actually no, we don't see him running yet. I'll get back to that later. So okay, we trap Bruce. They trap Bruce in this like sort of glass tunnel type thing, and then they have 2 soldiers on the ground shoot up like not paralysis, like smoke gas or something that will knock him out. They shoot it into the building, and then he's like rips off his shirt. He's trying to breathe, and then finally he succumbs to it. But as he does, smashes his hand against the wall. You see it turn green. He's hulking out, breaks out of this. I don't know what their plan was. I don't know why they thought that was a good idea, but he breaks out, and now he's on a rampage. He's killing everyone. Now we see he's like, "Blonsky, you're in." And then, so we see, I think it's like a shot of like 5 soldiers running, and then Blonsky running with them, and he is lapping these boys. Like, he is really, really fast. Very, Very Captain America reminiscent because the same super soldiers
On
here.
your left.
Yeah, he says that every single time. So we get this basically fight. Hulk is destroying everything. Blonsky just, I guess they think this is enough. So they say, Blonsky, just go fight him. Just go fight the Hulk. You can do it. And he does. It actually, I think it's a fairly cool scene. I think Blonsky,
I actually, yeah, I do like that fight. Overall, I'm not sure like what the military as a whole is doing there, but I do like the Blonsky versus Hulk fight there. I thought that was pretty cool.
I want to make go ahead.
There was this moment earlier in like the scene after Blonsky, when he's talking to the general after the first mission to catch the Hulk, and he's like, you know, a lot of other men, once they see that Hulk transformation, they're gonna be too afraid to act, and it's like, you should really be a little more afraid, Blonsky.
Yeah, I mean,
he got Spartan kicked like 50
we'll get to
yards
that. We'll get to that. Okay, so we get the Blonsky versus Hulk fight. It's clearly in the Hulk's favor. Blonsky really can't do any. I mean, he's shooting RPGs at him, and like Hulk is just eating them, literally just eating them, and then
I'm watching this whole fight, and they just keep shooting at him with every different kind of gun on the face of the planet, and all I can think is like, when do you smarten up and stop shooting at him? Because this is clearly just not working.
Yeah, you're just wasting money at this point. There's a scene where Blonsky like jumps off of Hulk's back and like is like shooting at him in the air with a pistol.
With a handgun. Yeah.
Did you really think that was gonna work?
Right.
But whatever.
Come on.
So Blonsky, Ross is like, all right, Blonsky, run this way. Lead him to the sonic thing, paralysis thing is. We don't really know what these are, but they seem to be able to like paralyze someone. It seems like I think it said Stark on the it's either says like Stark or Shield or something. So it's probably reminiscent. It's probably like somewhat related to the technology that Obadiah Stane had in Iron Man 1. So we see these two trucks and they start blasting the Hulk. Blonsky leads him there. They start blasting the Hulk. He can't move, and then we see Betty, who's just sort of like paralyzed at this point with like, because she never, I think she only saw the Hulk the first time and she got knocked out immediately. So I think this is like the first time she's like really seeing what the Hulk can do, and she's sort of scared. Yeah. But she's seeing Bruce as the Hulk getting like destroyed by these machines, and she snaps back and she's like trying to call out to him. And then that inspiration, it really buffs him up, and he just starts, he's like, never mind, these things don't bother me all that much. Destroys both machines. Fairly simple. And then I think, oh yeah, and then there's like, I might be skipping a little bit. There's something explodes, and Betty runs up to him, and there's like an explosion about to happen. He saves Betty, like he covers Betty entirely with his body, thus saving her. Ross thinks she's dead. We have the scene where Hulk carries her body out, and then you think he might give her back, but he doesn't. And then there's also Blonsky, like, I don't know if this happened after or before, but at one point Blonsky walks up to the Hulk and is like, "Is that all you got, bitch?" And then the Hulk just fucking kicks him into a tree, and then like. That was a brutal scene. Like, that is honestly was really, really rough. Like, that the way his like body just sort of fucking puppeted and just collapsed on that tree. It was rough. Blonsky presumably like, dead at this point.
He dead.
Yeah. Anyways, the scene ends. Hulk just fucking runs off with Betty. They go to the Grand Canyon or something. I don't know. They find themselves in some sort of cave.
Oh yeah, they're in the Everglades.
Sure. Okay, they're there. And then like there's Hulk is still Hulk, not Bruce yet, and like Betty's trying to talk him out, and then there's a scene where like there's thunder and Hulk freaks out. He's like trying to fight Zeus or something. Just turns around.
Thor, he's trying to fight Thor.
This doesn't really make sense to me because like Hulk he's dumb, but he's not like he's not that dumb. Like, we've seen Hulk talk in this movie. And then we've seen Hulk talk in, like, Thor Ragnarok. He's, like, capable of having conversations. And, like, in this movie, he's trying to fight the sky. What? Okay, whatever. Betty...
He has PTSD, okay? So, leave him alone.
He gets all the way to the Everglades with Betty, and all I can think is, like, he's incredibly agile and stealthy as Hulk. Like, I just don't understand how he can make it so far without
Yeah.
anybody noticing him and getting to
no
these
one-
remote locations.
Yeah, no one told Ross. Oh, also, I keep forgetting these like minor details that are actually really important. Also, at some point when he was at Betty's house, Betty gives him a USB. You know, USBs are really important in the MCU. She gives him a USB with all of his data, all of the data that was wiped by Ross. Betty saved, and then at some point during that whole thing at the university, he swallows the USB, which kind of fucked me. That's I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I would have just let
You
myself.
have pockets, dude.
But whatever. So he has the USB again. He goes to sleep as the Hulk, wakes up as Bruce Banner with Betty. On the other side of the world, not really, with the U.S. Army, Blonsky is like paralyzed. He's clearly fucked up. They say like his bones are basically just gravel at this point. Ross is like, well, he's gone. What am I gonna fucking do? So he goes back and just fucking moves on. I don't remember when this happens, so I'll just jump to it now. That's basically what I'm getting at for this whole entire thing. I don't know when any of this happens, but I'm just sort of stringing it together. At
There are
some
definitely
point,
a bunch of scenes in this movie in order.
Yeah.
At some point, the secretary comes back in. This definitely didn't happen right away, but I'm just fuck it. Who cares? At some point, Ross's secretary comes back in, says, "It's Blonsky, come on!" And then they all run, and Ross is like, "Okay, does he have any next?" He's like thinking he's dead. Does he have any next of kin or any family? They get there. Blonsky is perfectly fine. He's sitting up. He's just like sort of messing around with he's like cracking his knuckles or whatever. And he's like, "I'm ready for round 2." Also, he wants more of that cap juice, so they give him more of the cap juice. He starts getting fucked up basically. Like you see his fucking his eyes are, I don't know how to describe it other than just fucked up. Somewhere else, we see that Bruce and Betty are now in a motel or whatever. This is one of the scenes. Okay, they're in a motel. They they're just getting their fuck on. But the heartbeat starts going up. He's like, I can't get too excited. That was there's 2 scenes from the 1996 draft that made it to this movie. That is one of them. It was specifically
Really?
the scene where he was trying to fuck Betty but could not because the heart rate going up. Poor guy.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, that's well.
Really
So
gotta
here's
show
the
you the
thing.
negative sides of being the whole.
Yeah, as if there weren't.
Well, I
we
thought
didn't
it was
already
weird
understand.
I was like, so he says angry, but like he doesn't even need to get angry. Like his heart rate just needs to go up. Like
yeah,
just anything. He could be
any
scared,
emotion
angry, excited.
whatsoever.
Just anything that brings his heart rate up, he turns into Hulk. Like that sucks.
So plan is for Bruce and Betty to go to. They want to go to New York and meet Mr. Blue. They do that. they go to New York and meet. We're really all over the place here.
With $40, they got a truck, a boat ride, and a cab.
Yeah,
They're
and then
like, we have 40.
at some point he emails or like he goes in the chat room. Mr. Blue says like and sends some sort of message, and that tells the army where they are. Oh, I forgot to mention, we already talked about how it's not important, but I did forget to mention that the reason the army knew that they were at the university during that whole thing was because of Betty's boyfriend told them. So that happened, but who the fuck
Right,
cares?
that's the thing that made him like relevant to the plot in any way.
Yeah,
but
that
at
was
the
his
same time,
only relevance.
There was definitely a way to do that without him being there.
Yeah, I would have just believed that like Ross was just paying attention, like he was just had someone watching at all times.
Yeah.
But anyways, the army now knows who Mr. Blue is and where he is, and they're going to New York as well. So everyone meets up in New York. Bruce is like, "Hey, dude, what's up? It's me, Mr. Green." And Mr. Blue's like, "Whoa, Mr. Green, what's up, dude? It's me, Mr. Blue." And they just start broing out over some science. They're talking about I got gamma
I actually
poisoning.
kind of liked that scene. I thought it was weird, but at the same time, it's like, all right, so these are just 3 like really smart, socially awkward scientists talking about science stuff.
I don't know. I don't really like Mr. Blue. I actually, before when I was rewatching this, I really don't remember much about this movie at all, even now having seen it. So I really didn't know much about before that. So I didn't really expect Mr. Blue to be anyone. Like I expected, obviously it's a person, but I didn't really expect it to be explored in this movie. I forgot that happened, but so I wasn't even really expecting, like I didn't really care if it was no one. So this person, I'm not like, it's not a big deal to me, but I don't really like him all that much. Anyways,
I'm not super attached, but I did kind of like Mr. Blue. We'll talk more about this later, but he was just one of the elements of the film where like he was kind of goofy, and it was like this movie doesn't have that tone, so he didn't really fit.
Yeah. All right, so they're in their lab. They're in Mr. Blue's lab. He's just a university teacher, so professor. And they're doing some tests. He's like, I think we got this. We don't know if it's like gonna permanently, cure you, or if it will just stop that one instance. But probably just stop that one instance. So don't get too excited. So basically, but they test it, and he hulks out, and Mr. Blue was like, "Whoa, that shit was lit." He's in love with the Hulk. He's like, he's fucking rock hard. Cool. Yeah, he's ready to go. He almost like forgets to put the antidote in because he's so amazed. But so they test out the cure. It works. Bruce is back to normal, and then they're like, and I think Bruce is just like, well, let's just keep perfecting this or whatever. And then at some point in the conversation, Mr. Blue drops the fact that like he says something about like the other test subjects, and Bruce is like, what are you talking about? So he leads them to this section of the lab that was closed off, and we see like rows and rows and rows of stuff. It's like it is Bruce's blood and other stuff, and we get the idea that like, well, he says that he only sent a small sample, so I just concentrated and made more, and like this is all you, and think about what we could do. We could stop humans from ever having a disease again. That's like the most cliche mad scientist thing.
Big science, stop disease.
Yeah, whatever. He's like, no, you got to get rid of this shit. You need to burn it. They are after me. They want to weaponize this. What? And the scientist is like, come on, man. I hate the government too, but you think they're after you? Come on. Like, dude, they're after him. He was in Brazil running away from them. You knew this.
So one of my favorite things is he's talking about the disease, stopping the diseases and all these things. And I'm like, does he just like not watch the news? Because they definitely showed a clip of them covering the damage that was done at this college campus. And people talking about it, where I'm like, does Blue just not know that that's Hulk? Like, does he just completely oblivious to what's going on in the condition that Banner has?
Well, like, whatever, dumb, oblivious, whatever it is, Mr. Blue sees Bruce get shot as he's saying this, as he's like, the government, you're a little paranoid. A fucking dart shoots through the window, lands in Bruce. He's knocked out. Then the army just fucking rushes in basically, and they take Bruce, they tie him up, and then they just sort of for some reason they don't feel the need to handcuff Blue or Betty or anything. They just sort of like give him a blanket and lead them outside, and then like Bruce is like strapped down to a chair like a crazy person, and then but while that's happening, Blonsky stays behind and he's talking with Blue. And actually, this is somewhat important. It's not Blonsky originally. It is Mr. Blue and the female soldier, and they're just having a conversation. Blonsky walks up, knocks her out. So we're getting the idea, like, okay, Blonsky is fucked up. Like that is treason right there. He just knocked out a fellow soldier. Yeah. I don't know if that's treason. That's whatever it is. It's fucked up. So he's like, at
least get you court-martialed.
Yeah. So he says, "Fuck me up, dude." Basically, is basically what he says, and
Give
then
me all the cap juice.
Blue's like, "Dude, that'll fuck you up." And then Blonsky like chokes him out, and Blue's like, "No, I mean, I'll do it. It's just gonna fuck you up. I just need informed consent," is what he said. I was like,
"You've given it."
That is a really weird line, but whatever. This whole movie's just a bunch of really weird lines. And then as he's being choked out, Blue's like, "By the way, can I borrow $40 for the bus later?" So we basically
need to get out of the country after this.
Yeah. So while Ross and Bruce and Betty are in a helicopter flying away, for some reason they let Bruce and Betty just sort of be with each other. Like, why would you not separate these guys? But whatever, they're all in one helicopter. Meanwhile, at the lab, they're setting up the test on Blonsky. Blonsky fucking hulks out. He's even worse. He's like he's like the Hulk, except not green. He's gray, and they have like he has like doomsday bones protruding from him. All that crazy shit. And I want to put a note here before I continue. I haven't brought up the CGI. We talked about it not aging well with Iron Man, and we said like surprisingly the CGI in Iron Man, which came out a month before this movie, looks pretty good. Like that, the CGI looks as good or comparable to what we get nowadays. CGI in this one does not hold up nearly as well. Now Hulk, I'm a little forgiving on the Hulk. It's like not terrible. It is noticeably worse than what the Hulk we get nowadays, but it's not. It is. It's not Ang Lee's Hulk. It's not the 2003 Hulk. It's
definitely decent for the era.
Yeah, it's totally fine. Not as good as what we got from Iron Man, but it's fine. Abomination looks terrible. Like Abomination is ugly as fuck. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that.
I don't know why. I feel like we get this problem with a lot of CGI superhero monster characters. Like, Thing looks weird, Doomsday looks weird, Abomination looks weird, the Ninja Turtles look weird. No one looks normal.
I kind of like the Ninja Turtles, but that's a different review for a different day. Okay, so Abomination, the thing about Abomination is he's perfectly functioning. Like he's crazy, clearly, but that's just like he's crazy in the same way that Blonsky was crazy. He's still talking. Yeah. He's like he could say whatever he wants, and he just fucking. But he's he's Abomination. He's wrecking shit. He's like, I have all this power. I want to destroy everyone. He's destroying New York City. Of course, we went all the way from Brazil to Guatemala to somewhere else in the USA, and now we had to go back to New York City because they always got to be in New York City for these movies. They always want to destroy this fucking city, and here we are. So Abomination.
Wait, hey.
Go ahead.
So wasn't
something against the Yankees, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, wasn't Iron Man was in California, wasn't it? I thought his thing was in Malibu.
That is true. That is true.
And then everything else after that is in New York.
Yeah. Anyways, the point is, whether it's 3 times it destroyed or 4 times, it's still a lot of times. So Abomination's fucking shit up. We get it, and then Bruce is like, put me in, coach. And he's like, you think you control it? He's like, no, but I might be able to aim it. So they're like, he says, just open the fucking helicopter dropping thing and I'll just fucking jump. And Betty's like, what if that doesn't work? And he's like, I don't know, man. And this is interesting because I did not remember this part of the movie. And the same thing happens in Thor Ragnarok where they jump out and then it just doesn't work. Except this time... Yeah. This time he's in the air and he's like, oh shit, it's not working. And then he crashes. And it was like, what the fuck? That was really dumb. And then in Thor Ragnarok, he does the same thing, crashes and then falls. And I also thought that was a little dumb, but it was at least funny. Like I laughed at it. This one was just really stupid. Yeah. But
I think
go ahead.
In Ragnarok, it was clearly played for a gag, whereas this was supposed to be more of a suspenseful moment.
But yes, it was. I think it was shot as the music was suspenseful, but he does say, "Oh shit!" Like that is clearly like a jokey line.
Yeah.
But okay, of note, that is of the 2 scenes that came from the 1996 first draft. It was the sex scene, and then the helicopter drop scene is the second scene. So that's everything that came from the 1996. What were we saying, Kaiser?
So when he's on the helicopter and he's telling Ross that he needs to get back there and fight Abomination and whatnot, all I could think was like, he's making such a weak argument. Like if I was Ross, I would not let him go. Like I'd find some other way to try to bring down Blonsky. Like I would not be sending him out there just because he was like, no, maybe I can aim it. No,
I agree.
I definitely spent the past 7 years trying to find and capture you. I'm not letting you go now.
I also don't really... Yeah. This felt a little weird, weirdly fast. I don't because when they first got Bruce, they first shot through Mr. Blue's laboratory, got Bruce. I was like, okay, we probably have 40 minutes left of the movie. No, this is the last 15 minutes or something. We are really in the shit right now. But okay, he drops down. Oh shit, he's nothing, and then he pops back up. He's the Hulk, and then we just get into this terrible. It's not terrible, but it's they just fucking fight. Who the fuck cares? I mean, if you thought I didn't care about the Iron Man fight, I really don't care about this fight. It's just 2 CGI monsters. I don't even like either. I mean, I like Blonsky's character. I don't like Bruce Banner's character. I think Blonsky's a little underdeveloped, but what I like about Blonsky is not represented at all in this Abomination thing, and they're just fucking doing fighting and shit, and it's who cares.
So compared to the Iron Man fight, at least there's a sort of subplot where he's trying to get Pepper to shut down the arc reactor and blah blah blah, and even though that's all dumb, it's still going on top of that. This is just 2 monsters duking out. That's it. That's the whole scene.
with Iron Man, there was always, even though I didn't like that fight, there was always a sense of, there is thought here. Like, he needs to go up to the sky to get the suit to Frost. He needs to get Pepper to blow the thing up. He needs to do whatever. This one is like, they are just hitting each other. They are literally just hitting each other, and then one of them is eventually going to win. I don't know. I do not know. Okay. Yeah. They fight, and shit's getting fucked up. At one point, Abomination basically pulls down the helicopter, and then the fucking helicopter is down. It was a little more complicated than that, but who cares? They're now in this thing. They're like in this little courtyard or whatever, and these two are fighting, and it's like, you think Hulk clearly is the weaker one here. You think he's gonna lose, and then he just stops losing. And then starts winning. The hero. Yeah, he just starts winning again.
He gets stronger the more angry he gets.
Yeah, again, basically. So, so he fucking beats it. He beats Abomination. Oh, there's a scene where Abomination, or not, I don't know if Abomination intentionally does this, but the helicopter that has Ross and Betty that's on the ground now is like, there's a bunch of gas being leaked out, and it sets on fire, and the whole thing explodes for like half a second, and then Hulk does the signature Hulk clap, puts it out. What did you guys think of that moment? Did you like that?
It looked cool, but all I thought was like, no, she definitely should be dead with all that fire, and the clap felt really out of place with everything else Hulk had done previously in the movie. Like, it didn't seem as part of a feat that he should normally be able to do.
Yeah, because I thought about it like, I thought it was like, it looked really good, but it seemed too smart for how dumb this Hulk is.
Right. And I mean, it seems like if he could have done that, like, there definitely should have been another point in the movie where he would have done that.
Yeah, like, if he did that in the fight versus the U.S. Army at the college or whatever. Like, just something to set up that he does have this ability.
Right.
All
yeah,
right.
Other than that, it just kind of felt like, oh, okay, like, this is cool, but there was no setup for this at all. Like, it just happened.
And then Abomination does this thing where he's swinging these cinder blocks around. Doesn't just attack with them. He has to do a couple loops of the lasso, just swinging it around town. And
he has to really style on him.
Yeah, because he's such a fucking idiot and does that, Hulk does something, I forget. He gets the upper hand and then chokes him out.
He smashes the ground and the cracks go over and trip him up.
He says Hulk smash, and I don't like that. I don't like that he said that, because why would Hulk have said that?
Yeah, I did.
I don't know. It felt like purely fan service, and I'm not a fan of this movie, so it did not service me. But so yeah, he does that, and then he drops the cinder blocks, Abomination, and then Hulk runs up and grabs the chains and starts choking him out, and then just chokes him out. I think doesn't kill him. I think
right. Betty. I don't know if it's Betty or Ross, but somebody comes up and they're like, "No, don't kill him," and so I guess he just doesn't.
Yeah.
Fair point.
Okay, so Abomination is just on the ground, and I don't. What happened? Okay, someone needs to fill me in from here, because I don't remember what happens after this.
So if I remember correctly, after the fight, I hardly remember.
Okay.
He runs away again, and you see him like meditating, and like his eyes go green. And it's like that to me was like he's always angry thing. That was the only thing I thought like kind of carried over as a setup in Avengers. Like, you can kind of see that moment.
Okay. So basically you are 100% right. He just doesn't say anything. He just runs away after that moment. And then we get to what you just described. He's meditating in some scene with. Now, here's the weird thing about that. He smiles. Yeah. Why does he smile? What do you? But it's not just like a "I'm doing it" smile. It's like a "Look at me, asshole." Yeah. Like, what are you trying to tell me right now? Like, it just felt. It felt like evil. Like, not like outright evil, but just like this guy's scheming.
It felt ominous.
Yeah, he's scheming. I don't know what he's doing. He's scheming.
Yeah.
And then we go, this is not a post-credit scene. This is the movie.
No, right. It's the end of the movie. There's no post-credit scene.
Yeah, no post-credit scene. They just said, fuck it, just put this one in the movie. Tony, we see Ross, he's in a bar, he's just fucking chugging Mountain Dew or whatever. It looks like Mountain Dew. He's just chugging that shit. And then Tony walks in, he's like, he has some that witty banter about, the super serum or whatever. And then he's like, I'm developing a team. Which that also never pays off, by the way. On the list of things that like this movie tried to set up and totally failed at, that is also one of them. Is Tony Stark showing up saying, "I'm putting together the team," because one, Tony doesn't put together the team. Like that's not his job. Like he doesn't do that ever again.
So he says we're putting together the team, and the last line is Ross says, "Who's we?" And like that's the end, which I thought was weird because it's Shield's putting together the team, and Ross is part of Shield, so he just didn't know anything about that.
And on top of that,
he was promoted later.
Even with that in mind, like what we know next, we'll get to this next week in Iron Man 2. He's like Tony's not a part of that team. Like Tony doesn't get to be a part of that team until Avengers. Like he's kicked off the Avengers initiative.
Well with others.
So I don't know why was Tony sent on this mission? It totally doesn't make any sense. And then on top of that, why would you go to Ross for that? Because Ross doesn't have Hulk. What do you need Ross for?
Yeah, exactly.
So it doesn't pan out in any sort of significant way.
Yeah, and then the movie's over.
Yeah, end of movie. Okay, guys. We'll go into we'll do some quick discussions, but also just general thoughts you want to throw out. Just like we'll do some discussion points, but just thoughts about the movie itself. Did you enjoy the movie? Did you dislike the movie?
So I'll start. The movie definitely felt like it had 3 different writers. It was just, Zero said it earlier. He was just like, it was a bunch of scenes in an order. Like, that's really how the movie felt. Like, things happened. There didn't seem to be, like, a lot of setup for a lot of things. They just kind of like, oh, Banner is doing stuff. Like, and things happen. And it was like, oh, all right. I
think
I didn't like Betty's acting. Like, I don't want to say it was bad, but, like, I feel like everybody was just doing these different characters, and I feel like the characters weren't acted poorly. These were all good actors. It was just, for whatever reason, I don't think they played well off of each other.
Yeah, lack of chemistry, just it wasn't clicking. I totally understand.
Absolutely.
I did not buy into the Betty Bruce relationship at all. I didn't buy into her with her boyfriend. I just... There's no one who stands... The only character who stands out to me in this movie, who I actually enjoyed, was Blonsky. And then... But he was so underdeveloped. He was so, like... He was interesting at first, and then the second he starts putting in the super soldier serum, he starts going into the Obadiah, I'm crazy thing. Himself. Yeah, right. And I think, and this is going to be a point that's going to be hammered on pretty much throughout all of the MCU, is like, it's going to be like fairly good first 2 acts, and then suddenly the villain just goes crazy and starts fucking killing everyone, and that's the 3rd act, and it sucks. So we're going to repeat the villain. Yeah, we're going to repeat that, like, I'm sure for 3/4 of the MCU, and it sucks, but it happened here, it happened in Iron Man, and I don't know. Zero, do you have anything to say about the movie quality-wise?
I think you guys were a little harsh on it, but...
Oh.
I mean, I don't really disagree with anything you said, so maybe I'm just being defensive for no reason.
All right, let's just go ahead, Kaiser.
So, one point that I think it might... I just want to make this point, and I mean, it might turn into a discussion, but overall, I think the movie is... Like, Iron Man is good. This is just okay. Like, nothing about the movie made me think, gee, I really hated this about the movie. It was just like, none of this is particularly interesting or engaging in any way.
I think that's, if someone said, hey, I'm looking for the most okay superhero movie, I would point them... This
is it.
Yeah, this is like a list of 3 of the most okay superhero movies, definitely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Top 3 most okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think one of the things that makes it like it clearly is like the black sheep of the MCU. It doesn't really fit well with the rest of it. It doesn't like even we said Coulson is weird, doesn't fit well into Iron Man, but like this movie doesn't even have one of those.
Yeah, I think it just tried so hard to set things up
that never, ever, ever, ever came up ever again.
Yeah, so this, like, it just, everything feels out of place.
I think a part of that, like we alluded to, they were trying to set up two villains with Abomination and Big Brain
Leader.
Boy, Mr. Blue.
Yeah.
I feel like part of that may have been the apprehension about making a Hulk solo film once, Marvel started having control of the Hulk.
Yeah.
Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they don't actually, like, have the solo rights.
Yeah, they don't. It would, I mean, presumably they could make it happen through, like, the same type of thing with Sony, where it's like, we'll make it with you, and it will be a part of the MCU, and you could do it. But if they couldn't just do it without working out a deal with Universal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like they still could have used these characters for, like, the Avengers movies instead of using
literally
Loki
anything
over and over again.
Yeah.
Well, see, and that's kind of the point that I'm making, is that, like, Betty not only, like, isn't in another movie, doesn't even come up once at all in any other movie. Like, isn't even,
at least
Hulk
Jane
doesn't even go back.
At least Jane from Thor is like, hey, I heard you broke up with Jane. Well, no, yeah, I guess we did. And it's like, okay, at least you gave her a fucking line to explain why you don't care about this character anymore. This one's just like, Betty who? I don't know Betty.
Yeah, exactly. Well, see, and that's part of the reason why I didn't like her character at all. But what, for me, the biggest thing that separates it from the MCU is just that Norton and Ruffalo play in extremely different characters. And one of the reasons why I don't like standalone Hulk movies, despite the fact that they've tried so many, is that I think it's hard to make Banner an interesting character. Like, I get the conflict of, like, all right, I like, this is kind of a curse, and I don't really want to do this, and so he's trying to find a cure, and blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, like, he's just so bland. Like, Ruffalo made his character, like, his character's funny, and he plays well off of the other characters, and I think that's good. But Norton's guy is, like, I don't want to see him. Like, Hulk is more interesting, because even though he's just a monster running around destroying stuff, like, it's a superhero movie. I kind of expect that. It's Hulk. I don't want to see this guy trying to figure out his science stuff. Like, just show me Hulk smash stuff. Like,
I'm gonna disagree with you on this one. I'll agree with you partially. I agree that I don't want to see Ed Norton's Banner. I never want to see this Banner in a solo movie again. Mm-hmm. However, I do think a Banner solo movie could work. In fact, I would be surprised if they're not making one, or like they're not at least entertaining the idea after Thor Ragnarok and how successful he was in that story. I think they should definitely be thinking about that. And I 100% think Bruce Banner and the Hulk makes a great story. I think it, historically, I mean, there's a reason this guy is so popular in the comics, and there's a reason they've always tried, is because the comics do it. Like, the comics make these standalone stories where it does work. And we've had 30 billion tries on live action, and it's never worked, and that's true. And they all suck, and they really, really suck. But I think we're throwing out the baby with the bathwater, and that's not, because I think that opinion is one that is very popular. I think a lot of people agree with you, like, that Hulk is just not a standalone character. And I think I think we're giving up too early. And I think specifically, I compare it to Kaiser, you won't know about this, but there's an anime called Mob Psycho 100, and the character is basically, he is just this school kid who has the strongest psychic powers in the world. Basically, he is literally invincible. He could destroy anyone, but he doesn't like using his psychic powers. He thinks it's a crutch. He doesn't like, he equates it to someone having a talent for singing. It doesn't make them better than anyone. He's constantly trying to avoid using them because he just wants to be a normal human being. And so much of that anime plays out in the sense of, like, people forcing him to use it, and when he does, it's always this huge climactic moment, and it's really sad. And I think you could do the same thing with Hulk, where it's like, I don't think it should ever be Hulk, like, the climax of the movie is Hulk versus blank, or like Hulk versus Abomination. It should always be Bruce Banner versus Hulk. It should, like, I asterisk on always. I think there have been stories where Hulk is an interesting character on its own, but I think in general, if we want to walk before we can run, the story you want to tell is one where it's like Bruce Banner, and the climax of the movie is him facing Hulk in a sort of, I don't want to turn into the Hulk, but I have to turn into the Hulk, or like I'm being forced to, or whatever. That should always be it. I think when you start going into the Hulk turning into Abomination, Hulk turning, Bruce turning into Hulk and then fighting Abomination. I think it works in, that is when the character works in a side story, like as a side character in a story. Like it totally works when Hulk is destroying aliens in Avengers. I'm fine with that. But if you want to tell a Bruce Banner story, you want to tell a Hulk story, that cannot be the climax of the movie. And I think that is the issue. I think that is why we haven't seen one, is because people just don't understand that for whatever reason.
So I think to some degree you're right, and I would agree with that. I think that was one of the things that they did really well in Avengers was, you have someone like Tony who's trying to agitate him because he thinks it's funny, but then you have Bruce and a lot of other people like, oh, well, don't piss him off and whatnot. And I think that, that's a really memorable line in Avengers where he's like, I'm always angry. That's like how he deals with Hulk. And I think that relationship and the way they established it between Hulk and Banner has paid off really well, and they've done it really well in Avengers and Ragnarok and in Infinity War. I think that's one of the things they're doing really well now. But I think that if they were going to do a standalone, I would suggest they do something like with Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 is when they bring in Black Widow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be good for them to do something like that. Or at the very least, there was emotional stakes on some sort of level in Iron Man. There was zero of that in this Hulk movie. Yeah, all right, you're in love with Betty, but she only ever accidentally ended up in danger. It wasn't like she was ever a target or actually threatened by the bad guy, deliberately. It was always just, oh, she's accidentally in the middle of this crossfire, and now he goes to save her, and it was just really, it felt really half-baked to me.
I think about, just to compare to Mob Psycho again, and there's the scene in episode 5 where it's like you were watching Mob get choked out. Quick spoilers. Yeah, fuck you. Watch the show. There's a scene in episode 5 where Mob is getting choked out by this guy he's fighting, and Mob is like, if Mob just wants to fight back and he just uses his psychic powers, he will destroy this guy. But he's willing to die as opposed to use his powers. And as the scene plays out, it's a minute long of him getting choked, and you feel so powerfully about this character, about you totally empathize with him not wanting to do it. There's a scene where while he's getting choked out, he tries to just punch, and the thing about it is he's so weak, he only has psychic powers, he's not physically strong at all, so the punch doesn't do anything. And you I'm literally crying watching this fucking scene. And then I watched the Hulk, and it's I don't give a fuck if you Hulk out or not. I don't care. Just Hulk out. I don't care. You haven't made me care in any way.
Why are you even hesitating?
Yeah, well, I watched it, and part of me, I think one of the reasons why I like Polanski is because I'm kind of with him on why would you not want that kind of power? I get you kind of lose it and you turn into a dummy, but
you can't fuck.
It doesn't look like it doesn't look like your life is so wonderful even without it, or that it was so wonderful without it that you'd want to give this up. It just kind of seems I don't like being a giant massive brute, and it's that's not motivation enough for me to think, oh, I feel bad for you. Sorry.
Yeah. So you have anything to say about that before I segue into something else?
No.
I said 0.
Oh.
I did have something to say, but I don't remember what it was.
All right, just interrupt me if you think about anything. So that thing I wanted to bring up, last time we did a comic book comparison where you guys both read the Iron Man origin. There were no adequate comic books. I really did look, and there just didn't seem to be anything that really had that many parallels. I saw some stuff, but nothing good enough to really be worth comparing, because the thing is, this isn't even really an origin story, so we couldn't even just pull up the Hulk origin story. So no comic book comparison this time. Hopefully we could continue doing those later. The other thing I want to bring up, just to continue with the box office stuff, not many comparisons, not many extrapolations based off this, but it is this movie did have a $150 million budget, so $10 million more than Iron Man. However, only grossed $263.4 million. If you remember, Iron Man did 580 or something. So this made its money back in terms of just the budget, but if you factor in marketing and everything, this did not make its money back. So that was probably a huge dent into the MCU going forward, considering this was only the second movie, but luckily they made it through. As a comparison, Ang Lee's Hulk, which came out in 2003, basically made the same amount. It was $120 million budget, so 30 million cheaper, and then it made 245 million, so 20 million less. So for the most part comparable. Considering that movie came out 5 years beforehand, that's a little pathetic, but whatever. And then the last comparison, unfortunately, there's like for Iron Man, I compared it to like Doctor Strange because it's kind of like an obscure character origin. This one didn't. I didn't feel like this one had an adequate comparison, so I kind of I pulled Thor Ragnarok because that's the next movie that features Hulk really heavily. So this is going to be skewed a little bit because that is a Thor movie, so it's not a direct comparison. But Thor Ragnarok, $180 million budget, $854 million in the box office. That movie was a huge success last year, and a lot of that, is on Thor. A lot of that is also on Hulk for being such a great character in that movie. So the only thing I could extrapolate from that is that I would imagine going forward, Kevin Feige, the MCU, is like, maybe it's time to give Hulk another shot. We already talked, Zero, you brought up that they don't necessarily have the rights, but they did the deal with Sony with Spider-Man. I would think that you want to at least open up the conversation. Maybe they don't because I don't know if you guys heard, but they officially did acquire Fox. That is officially happening. So they have their plate full in that aspect. But if I was Kevin Feige, yeah. If I was Kevin Feige, I would at least, it would be on the document. I don't know if I'd pursue it, but it would be on the document. All right, Kaiser, you have anything else to discuss?
So, as you guys know, I'm a big fan of villains, and so I just wanted to take a second and kind of compare Blonsky and Stain, since those are the two that we've done so far.
Obadiah Stane.
Yeah, and just like what they contribute to the story and their characters in general. I think that for Stain, or Obadiah, however you want to say it, he kind of makes sense where you're like, oh, he's a businessman, and then it's like, oh, I guess he's doing some shady stuff, and it's like, oh, he's just like doesn't like Tony, and then it like really spirals off into like, what are you doing, Whereas I feel like Blonsky kind of has a similar arc, but at the same time you can see how he makes that progression. You can see how it's like, all right, so he clearly wants this power, he wants to like, he says that line where he's like, if I had, the experience I have now in the body of 10 years ago, that's a guy I wouldn't want to fight. So he has this sense of like, I want to be physically better than I am. And then he starts getting drugged up. So like, even though it seems a little weird that he goes on this rampage, like you can kind of get it. Like he's a little power hungry and now he's on drugs. Moral of the story, don't do drugs. Whereas Stain just kind of goes crazy out of the blue for no reason. And it's like annoying, and I feel like it really takes from the story. And I feel like that really factors into Blonsky just being a better character and a better villain than Obadiah overall. I definitely think that Iron Man, is a better movie, but I do think that Blonsky is a much better villain than Obadiah at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you. It, basically what you're getting at, and I agree with this 100%, is like there was a line of logic to follow with Blonsky. Like, right. He went insane. I get why he did, though. I wish he didn't, but I get why he did. With Obadiah, it was like, why are you insane right now? Like, why are you so crazy?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean, I mentioned in the last video what I think should have been done with Stain and the story arc, but for this, I feel like, the one I pitched for Obadiah was just like, you should really just redo the story this way. For this, it's like, just expand on the character a little bit more. Like you said, he was very underdeveloped, and I just feel like if he had a bit more screen time, like, this is definitely a character I could have got behind, Yeah. And I thought that, again, he just needed more screen time for us to kind of get a bit more into his psyche.
I agree. All right, Zero, any last thoughts before we go into the rank?
I remembered what I wanted to say earlier. I wanted to, I guess, ask if you guys thought that, I sort of sensed that, the way they're using Hulk in this movie is very different, obviously, from the way they use him in, like, Thor Ragnarok, where he's more of, like, a bro to Thor, and in this, he's, like, Jason Voorhees. I feel like this sort of like horrific take on the character, we see a little bit of it in Marvel, or rather in Avengers. So it's not like this is the only time it happens in the MCU, but I feel like it's really just not what we want to see from the main character.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's sort of acting like a villain, but this is supposed to be the good guy, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, with Hulk, there's always sort of that, I guess, weird dynamic where it's like, yeah, he's supposed to be a good guy, but he is literally a monster.
Yeah, he's a loose cannon.
Well, I think that's a good point, because I had said that there are stories where Hulk is an interesting character, and those stories are where Hulk is like reasonable. Like World War Hulk and Planet Hulk are good stories because Hulk is like, he's not just some crazy monster. He's like, he's
exactly.
just, he's scorned, he's like, he feels betrayed, and it sort of plays on that. And it's, for a character that's built around just being angry, you really got to take it a step beyond that. You need to develop an actual character that's not just a monster who is mad and destroying things. If you want Hulk to be interesting, that's just what you have to do. So I totally agree with you.
Well, and one of the things that I would say is like, that's one of the things I think they did really well in Ragnarok, is that, you have all this screen time with Hulk, and he's not just an idiot. Like, he's there, and he likes to fight, and he sits around, and like, he has his own like bedroom, and he lounges about and does his thing.
Yeah, he's
and,
learned to communicate and interact with the world around him.
Right,
yeah.
And I think that was really, like, it was really good to put that in.
There was a scene in Thor Ragnarok that this is like one of my favorite scenes in that movie is Valkyrie is walking into Hulk's room, and then as they're walking past each other, they do like a little boxing, like sparring, sort of just joking around with each other, throwing fists at each other. And I thought, like, that is so interesting to see Hulk do that. Like, that is like, he's just playing around.
Right.
I thought that was
so one of the scenes that we kind of skipped over is when Betty and Bruce are in the car together, and she's like, oh yeah, and what is it like? And he's like, oh yeah, when we took that acid and blah blah blah. But he makes a point of like, oh, that like, this is something different. She's like, no, but I thought that, like, you kind of connected with me there. He's like, no, this is a totally different being. And it's like, well, play on that, like, make it a different person, don't just make it some mindless brute that yells at Zeus because lightning. Like, do something with it. Give him a level of personality, and that's one of the things that Ragnarok did really well. Right. The other thing, before the rating, is like, this is one of the movies that it doesn't have that underlayer of comedy that other Marvel movies have, and this is one of the biggest big problems with the Thor movies too, is that they tried to make it serious. And, like, they throw in little bits of comedy, like the thing where he's like, you won't like me when I'm hungry. Like, yeah, that was kind of funny, and I got a chuckle out of it, but it didn't fit with the rest of the tone of the movie, which was serious. And it's like, just throw in the comedy if that's what you're going to do. Like, this has shown that it works better when you do it like that. And, I mean, they didn't know it at the time, but I think that's one of the things that definitely plays into the movie not being as good as others.
Yeah, I agree.
One more thing I wanted to talk about. The video game that came from this movie on the PS2 was literally one of the best sandbox games I've ever played, because it had that iconic move where Hulk like destroys the car and then turns it into two big like boxing gloves. And you could do that in the game. You could destroy entire buildings, and it was just really fun. I love that game.
All right, noted. That will surely factor into the ranking. And with that
definitely.
note, let's go ahead and rank it. That's the whole point of this podcast. We're ranking the MCU. This is the second movie in. Iron Man currently sitting at number 1. Where will the Incredible Hulk sit? I'm sure we're not going to disagree here. Is it number 2?
Number 1.
Okay.
I have to dispute that. I definitely think Iron Man's 1 right now, and Hulk is 2.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and put my vote in for that too. 0, just for confirmation.
Yeah, this is 2.
Okay. All right. On that note, I forgot to write out an intro. I'm just winging it. Okay. On that note, this has been the MCU Ranked review. This has been the Incredible Hulk. Every week we review one of the Marvel movies in order, rank them from the best to the worst. I'm your host, Eddie, blah, blah, blah. With me, Zero, and then Kaiser. We will see you guys next week with Iron Man